When you dare to share, you break the silence. When you dare to share, you speak your truth. When you dare to share, you use the full strength of your voice. When you dare to share, it brings opportunity to own your story. So tell it, be heard, and at the same time, your sharing is someone else's learning, inspiration, motivation, empowerment, and hope. There's always an element to each of our stories that remains a secret. For some, we feel it's a dirty little secret. Dare to share your untold story exposes these secrets in a welcoming and positive way. I encourage each of you out there to dare yourself to share what is yours to tell. When we dare, it is the courage to do something really important. Let this be a vow to each and every single one of us that we take risk, we brave, confront, and face what is, while inspiring and empowering all communities. So let's break that silence and tap into mental beauty. This is Salima Jadabji, your podcast host, a practicing social worker, and your mental wellness connoisseur. Welcome to the Dare to Share Your Untold Story podcast, episode number 91. The important reminder of showing up for others just as you'd like them to show up for you. To all my fellow listeners, before we get started, I'm just dropping in a note to give you a heads up that this podcast might be emotionally triggering for you. We do invite guests onto the show who share openly about extremely difficult life moments with exposure and impact of what the struggles have been like. The intensity of each episode could have a variable impact on your emotional and mental well-being based on your own personal story. If at any point the topic becomes uncomfortable or upsetting to you in any way, please do not pressure yourself to listen. Instead, be kind to yourself, do some self-care, and perhaps give another episode a try. Today, I have the pleasure of introducing our courageous and daring guest, Sonia Couto. Sonia is a two-time tech founder, managing director, board member with a 17-year tenure in the tech industry, and a breast cancer survivor. Sonia has navigated the complexities of a male-dominated field with expertise and determination. Her passion is deeply rooted in technology, entrepreneurship, and health, and she is dedicated to mentoring founders to overcome early-stage challenges and cultivate a mindset for sustained growth. Sonia is recognized for launching a tech product, as well as her skills in revitalizing promising concepts that initially failed and were abandoned. Sonia's approach to problem-solving is characterized by simplicity and clarity. She focuses on breaking down complex challenges to their essence and tackling them with direct and effective strategies. She is a visionary leader in the tech industry and credits her breast cancer journey, a period marked with courage, resilience, and strength, as a testament to the transformative power of vulnerability and perseverance. Welcome, Sonia. Welcome to the Dare to Share Your Untold Story podcast. Hello.
Hello. Thank you for having me.
Oh, it's my pleasure. Sonia, I'm delighted to have you as a guest on the show today. I'm really grateful for your willingness to be here and to talk about the deep dive that you're about to get yourself into. I've said this before, and I say this consistently, is that I'm really humbled. I truly am humbled to encounter guests like yourself who just show up, tell their story, and allow me to tap into the vulnerabilities in these unknown spaces, draw on your strength, and that brings out insights and inspiration getting shared into the space. It's a really incredible process. And so I believe it's so important that we take a stance together to help break barriers of mental stigma.
I completely agree with that.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
All right. So, in case you're still wondering, the podcast is all about bringing forward untold stories that people go through, whether it's directly about a mental health struggle or something else. And we know that no matter what the story, there is impact on one's own mental health in some way, which remains tucked away. So, this platform, it's a way to break the barriers of mental stigma that have been conditioned in our society. So together, I'm hoping that our mission can be that both of us really show up to encourage people to share and tell what individuals typically have reservation to express. And so, of course, I continue to bring forward a trend called the mental beauty rethink. So, what are the first things that come to your mind? What pops into your mind when you hear this phrase, the mental beauty rethink?
I think of it being a whole body rejuvenation in the sense of starting over, rethinking who you are, working on yourself, and just feeling beautiful from the inside out versus outside in.
Mm, inside out instead of outside in.
Yeah.
I like it. I like it. And one of the aims of this phrase is that neutrality, right? Bringing balance to the idea that we can accept ourselves and we can accept others.
Hmm.
And it's an invitation to see things without having to decide if it's good or bad or right or wrong, that it's just part of who we are and who people are.
Hmm.
Yeah. Thank you for sharing that, Sonia.
You're welcome.
Yeah. All right, Sonia. Now we get to do that fun thing where we take a deep dive and tap into all parts of your story. What do you say?
Awesome. I'm ready.
Okay, here we go. Okay, Sonia, give us the newspaper headline of how you would title your untold story. How would it read?
I think it would go A Woman in Tech Who Survived Breast Cancer.
Say the title one more time.
A Woman in Tech Who Survived Breast Cancer.
Okay. So, what can you say about this headline?
I think it says a lot about my passion of technology and what I live and breathe on a daily basis. And then the
Mm-hmm.
breast cancer part, it's not just breast cancer, but it's a representation of going through really tough things in my life, like the breast cancer, and
Mm-hmm.
the outcome of that.
Right. I like that. So it's a combination of your work, your
Hmm.
passion, as well as journeying through pain and struggle and strife and how the toughness has molded you.
Exactly.
Very cool. Very cool. It's a straightforward title that has so much meaning. And that's why I always get curious when people give me titles. I just always know there's more. So thank you for sharing that depth. Thank you.
Yeah, no problem.
Okay, so now why don't you give us that snapshot? Give us that snapshot of your untold story. How did it begin? Who's involved? What, when, where? All of those pieces.
Yeah, my untold story is about me going through physical and emotional trauma and my deep feelings and how I overcame my thoughts, my pain, and dealt with my relationships.
And is this in relation to your cancer journey or is this separate from that?
A lot of it has to do with my cancer journey for sure. I learned a lot about myself during that time, and it's had a very deep impact in my life. So, a lot of who I am today is because of that journey. I feel like
Right.
prior to that, my whole life has been sort of a preparation for
Mm,
going through that
right.
experience. So a lot of what I talk about comes from that experience. I've applied it to my whole life in different areas, but a lot of the learning came from that.
It's rooted in that journey, in the cancer
Mhm.
journey. And if you don't mind me asking, when did you have that diagnosis?
September 27, 2017.
The date sticks with you, huh?
Oh, yeah.
Right? It's one of those things, I guess, that doesn't leave your mind.
Never, yeah.
And so tell me, like, if you got this diagnosis and you're also talking to me about the overall and overarching theme of, my story is about physical and emotional trauma and these deep feelings and how I overcame my thoughts and the pain and, dealt with complicated relationships. How does that relate to your cancer journey, if you can say more? Or when you got your diagnosis, did you share it with people? How did people react? Is that part of the trauma that you experienced? I'm just so curious.
Yeah, that's a good question. When I got my diagnosis, I shared it with only close people to me. So my sisters and one of my best friends. I sort of kept it between just about 3 or 4 people. And that was just because I didn't know how to really deal with it at the time. My
Right.
experience with relationships and things like that was after and during. the reaction that I got from the people that I shared with was mixed. You know, I had someone tell me that they felt like they were going to puke. I had
Oh
someone
my.
just not even know how to respond, and they were just scared for me.
Hmm.
And then I had someone say to me, nobody wants this, but if anyone was going to have this and can make it through it, it's you.
Oh,
They're just trying to remind me of how tough I am, right? So
right,
it wasn't a bad thing. At the
right,
time, I didn't take it as a bad thing either. So it was
right.
just a mixed reaction. It's hard for somebody to, know what to say in a situation like that.
Well, it's a surprise, right? It's usually coming from left field when you get the diagnosis yourself.
Yeah.
When any individual gets a health diagnosis, and especially when we say the C word, right? Cancer.
Yeah.
And then for people in your life to learn about it, everyone, each person is going to respond differently. Like you said, one person wanted to vomit, right?
Mhm.
Physical illness, not knowing how to respond, or someone expressing fearful emotions, or other people trying to impart the go-getter attitude, like you got this, you can do this, if anyone can do it, you can beat this. So because everyone responded differently, how did that affect you?
It's hard for me to tell, honestly, because I was in such a numbing stage at the time. When I look back, I don't think people's reaction had any effect on me just because I was in that numb state. So people
Mm,
were talking to me, they were expressing their feelings, and I wasn't really hearing them. I remember those thoughts from afterwards, but
yeah.
at the time people's reactions and words didn't really mean much to me. I was internally telling myself something completely different. I was going through something different. So it was going in one ear, out the other, to be really
Hmm.
frank.
So then internally, what were you really telling yourself?
From the moment I got diagnosed, the only thing I could think about was if I'm going to die, I don't want to be a burden for anybody. So
Mhm.
what do I need to do now to get my affairs in order? Yes, I had this sense in me that was saying like, oh, you have a big journey ahead of you. You're going to have to fight it. You can do this. But my first initial thought was, am I going to die? And if so, I don't want to be a burden for anybody. I need to
Right,
get my life in order so that if I go, I'm gone and nobody else has to worry about me.
right. That must have been a really hard place to be in.
I guess. I mean, I live alone. I've been alone for a while now that I'm sort of like I'm very independent. I don't like asking people for things. I don't like to be a burden on anyone. So that was just so my natural go-to. I mean, later on, I sort of when I had time to process, I felt a little bit differently, but at the time of
Mhm,
my diagnosis, those were just my feelings. And I think they were just mixed up thinking about cancer. I just didn't know how to think properly.
mhm. Like, you didn't know what to think about it, right? Like, it's
Yeah.
it's such a mind stump, right? Like, cancer?
Yeah.
Really?
I mean, the first
Me?
thing I did, I mean, I talked to so many women that have gone through a similar experience, and they all sort of react to what I did. Like, really? That's what you went and did? And because the first thing I did was I went and called my life insurance company and made sure that I had a beneficiary and that, like, I made sure that my affairs were in order before I even looked at my health.
Right.
Most people go the complete opposite. They search for comfort.
Well, I think everyone's process is different.
Yeah,
So, you're very action-oriented and independent, as you mentioned. So, for you, it was like, what T's and I's do I have to cross and dot?
exactly. Yes.
Right?
Yeah.
And so I'm hearing that, yeah, you had a different approach. And it certainly sounds like you were in that numbing state that you described a moment ago. And while at the time you might not have felt that internal turmoil, but over time, or maybe looking at it now from where you were, what sort of other pain were you contending with at the time?
I really struggled with everyone always telling me, you're strong, you're strong, you're strong, you got this. And so I sort of put on a facade of being strong for everyone around me because I felt that was the expectation and how I should be. But inside,
Oh,
I was feeling very differently than what I was expressing on the outside. On the outside, I was
mm.
living my life like I normally do.
So you're masking. really masking what you were experiencing.
Yeah.
Oh, goodness. Okay. And so when you were masking, people on the outside thought we're giving her these words of encouragement. She looks like she's in a positive spirit. She's really strong. You are telling me you didn't really feel that strong, but you were putting on the face for it, right?
Hmm.
So
Yeah.
what was breaking down inside? I imagine that something was breaking down.
Yeah, I mean, at first, I was just really, really worried, and
Mm-hmm.
I I thought I was going to die. You know, when you get
Mm-hmm.
diagnosed with cancer, you don't know right away the stage that you're at. You
Right.
don't, and the first thought that comes to your mind is death. And so I thought I was going to die, and so I was really sad. I was sad
Right.
because I wasn't going to be around to see my nephews and my nieces grow up. I was gonna miss out on my, my sisters and my mom and all of this stuff. So I was really, really, really sad. And then I was really sad for myself
Right.
because I wasn't gonna get to be here and I was gonna be gone and no one's gonna remember me after a couple of years and I'm just gonna be this person that passed by this earth and left nothing for people to remember.
So it's almost like you started to grieve
Yeah.
in advance.
Mhm. A little bit, yes.
Yeah. I mean, I don't mean to say it in a joke way, but like,
No, you're right.
when you're talking about that sadness and these losses that you're anticipating and such a deep sadness rooted in that.
And yeah, it was. You're right. I mean, you completely just nailed it. I was just really, really sad. And I think
Mm,
it's been 5 years now, but no one's ever really asked me, to be honest, like, how were you really feeling? And now that I'm expressing it to you and I'm like, I was really sad, I feel the sadness as I say it.
And I can hear it when you say it too.
It was such a deep feeling. I do still have moments where, like, I'm not in that place anymore now, but yeah, I was really, really sad. It was a really you're right, you used the right word, I was mourning.
hmm I can hear that you're honoring these suppressed emotions or this packed down emotions that you weren't really feeling that anyone should see or hear about. I'm
Yeah.
hearing that you're honoring it now.
Yeah, absolutely. I've put a lot of thought into it afterwards.
Yeah. And what are some other things that you were harboring? What else was intense for you that you were harboring?
I mean, the sadness was the big one, but I wanted to be alone. I didn't want to be around people at all.
Mhm,
So I became very isolated. And that was just because I was sad, but I didn't know how to express myself. And
mhm,
I was masking myself. And I was just in a very confused state.
mhm,
I would go around people and I would have comments made like, oh, you're getting a free boob job or oh, it's not a big deal. There's cures for that now. Breast cancer has so much money and research put into it. You'll be fine. So I just got to a point where I didn't want to be around people and I didn't want to listen to people.
Did you feel misunderstood or invalidated?
No, I felt like people were very selfish.
Okay, tell me more about that.
I felt like I had to comfort them.
Yeah. Okay.
And I'm not saying this was with everyone, but there were people where they didn't really care. I don't know if it was care, but they didn't really want to hear about me talking about my experience. Even today, there are certain individuals where I will not open my mouth to talk about cancer because I can see it in their face where they're like, oh, she's going to start talking about that again.
But do you think it's because they don't wanna hear or because they're just so outright uncomfortable? Like, they just do not know how to deal with talking about cancer? Like, it is that their own fears and insecurities?
It's hard for me to tell because they weren't there for me. I don't know if it's because they don't know how to deal. In my mind, it's you weren't really there for me. You don't really care about what I have to say. That's how I see
Mm. It's your experience of it, right?
it.
Mhm. Okay. And so how did people show up for you,
Yeah,
or did they?
yeah. I did have people show up for me who went out of their way to pick me up from the hospital and take me to their home so I wouldn't be alone or leave their home and come and hang out with me for a week in my home and stay at my place while I was having all these surgeries. So I did have a couple people show up for me, but I can count in one hand how many people showed up for me. And I
Right.
can count in two hands how many people disappeared during that
Mm.
who, would send me a text message, "Oh, if you need anything, let me know." And then I would never hear from them again. Or, "Oh, are you going to be home this day?" After they know it's the day I'm coming home from the hospital.
Like, where would you go?
Yeah. And it's like, oh, I'm gonna come visit you, and then I don't hear from them at all. They don't.
Sonia, you're saying that someone would say, I'm going to come see you tomorrow night or something like that, and then they just don't show up?
Yeah, and I don't hear from them at all. Like they wouldn't tell me, oh, something came up. I can't come tonight. I'll come another night. Yeah, no, just never heard back.
Wow. What was that like?
I felt like I didn't matter.
Mm, okay.
That was someone that was close to me. But then I had people who I had met like for a short period of time, and those were the people that really showed up for me.
Like new people, like people that were new to you.
Yeah, exactly.
What do you think that's about?
I think that, I don't know, I think everyone has lives and they're busy doing their thing. And
Hmm.
I think it's about priorities, right? You choose which friends are your priority and which ones are
Hmm.
not. And I wasn't a priority. That's how I see it, and that hasn't changed for me. I'm still friends with people, but I don't think they saw me as a priority.
And then I guess you had to readjust and realign
Yeah.
your boundaries too, right? Like this
Oh,
person might not be in my immediate circle or in
yeah,
my immediate response circle or my must respond within 24 hours circle or
yeah.
the people I'm going to drop things for. Like I'm sure you had some readjustments to make.
That is definitely one thing I got out of that whole experience is learning how to build boundaries. Because I'm the type of person, I'm very giving, I'm very welcoming. When you're in my life, I treat people like they're family.
Right.
So if someone ignores me like that, then I had to learn. I don't think that if I had gone through that experience, I wouldn't have learned and I would have changed my patterns or my boundaries. But I got to experience that. And yeah, I had a hard lesson in boundaries for sure.
Hmm. Yeah, I mean, it baffles me that you experienced it that way, that, there's people who were really important to you not showing up. What did you do with the people who would say like, let me know if I can do something for you or let me know if you need something? Did you ever actually tell people if you needed something or were you hoping for something else?
No, honestly, the people who would text message me and say, "Oh, I'm here for you. Let me know if you need something." I never asked them for anything and I never reached out because to me, it's so easy to send a text message. Everyone can send a text message anytime. I mean, you could be on the toilet sending a text message.
That's true.
It's the meaning behind it. Yeah. I had people who text message me the same thing, but then the next day they'd be like, "Are you home? I'm coming over. You haven't asked me for anything because I know you, so I'm coming over and I'm coming to
Hmm.
see you." And I have people show up at my house with groceries. I have a friend who lives in Dubai and she put together a care package and had it shipped
Wow.
to me with books and blankets and snacks and, beautiful note
Wow.
just because she wanted to do something for me and show up for me, right? So my thought is if someone just sends me a text message and says, "Let me know if there's something I can do for you," versus someone messaging me that but then showing up for me, to me it's like, okay, they're putting in the effort to really express to me that they want to be there for me. It's hard to be in that situation and feel like you're bothering people.
Yes, because you're already feeling out of sorts with your own illness and you're battling life and health and you're going through turmoil, physical turmoil that no one will understand unless they're actually going through that journey, like a parallel journey, right?
Yeah.
And then I'm sure that there would have been a time while you're also freaking out and worrying about, am I going to die? What stage is this? Did the test results come back? Did they get everything? I wonder if they really read it properly. Like, I wonder if they read all the test results properly. Like, did they get it wrong? Was there a glitch in the system somewhere? Right? With all of that, and then my work life, and I worked hard as a female in the tech industry. I've had to dominate circumstance and work my way up this ladder because that's a whole other story. And you're
Mhm.
dealing with all this, and then you're wondering about people showing up for you and how they're showing up for you. So if you're already feeling like this is not me, I'm an independent person, I have conditioned myself to be independent so I do not have to ask for help. And if people are noticing your vulnerability and not acting on it, I imagine it would be a little painful for you.
Yeah, it really was. But, it also told me how people really are. and it helped me prioritize people in my life. It is what it is, right? What can you do? I can't change it. Me not reaching out to people and saying, "Oh, I need this," is because I'm already going through something tough and I don't want to be a burden on anyone. I don't want
Yeah,
my friends to be like, "Oh, Sonia's asking for help again." I don't want to be that person. So the people that asked me that question and then turned it around with an action like just paying me a visit or having a package shipped to me, it showed me that they weren't just asking that question to be polite. They were asking the question because they genuinely wanted to be there for me. And if I
right.
didn't let them be there for me because I was going through turmoil and my thoughts were up and down and I just wasn't in the right frame of mind, they were thinking, we understand, so I'm going to show up for you.
Right.
The people that were like, oh, she never asked me for anything, so, we'll talk 2 years later.
You could see the consistency between thoughts and actions,
Yeah, exactly.
right? That's what I'm hearing. And it sounds like, yeah, I guess if you're telling me that people know what you're going through and they're waiting for you to tell them, I don't know if it's something about society and people feeling, oh, I don't want to impose. Because I've
Mm,
heard people tell me that spectrum of thought processing as well, of like, I don't really always know how to show up for them. I assume that if someone needs something, they'll let me know, and then I'm going to do my best to do
yeah,
that. And some people are more forthcoming to be like, this is how I'd like to help, or this is what I would like to do, or here I'm doing this, deal with it, kind of thing, right? So I
yeah,
know that people have different capacity, and there's some people who are dealing with a lot of life turmoil as well, not necessarily cancer, but they're still reaching out to say, I'm thinking of you, right?
yeah,
So keep that in mind as well. But at the same time, I totally understand when you tell me, I just don't want to be a burden. If someone knows, rather than sending me a note to ask me what I need, when they know the person I am, that I'm not going to ask for help, that it's out of my character to do that, and comfort zone, like that it's
yeah.
not even something that you contemplate, like it's not even in your verbiage, right? Like
Mhm.
that someone would need to be strong enough to be more forthcoming and say, here's what I can do, or here's what I'm planning to do. Is this okay? That would be different, right?
Exactly.
So it sounds like what I'm really gracious to hear is that there were people who did show up for you.
Hmm.
And so that's really important. And now knowing that, did it sting when you could see? I mean, I know you learned about people and you learned how to prioritize and set boundaries, but that internal experience, did you end up having any like narratives that came from that of your belief system in people or your trust in others? Like, did any of that get compromised, or was there a narrative you ended up adopting at all?
I think so. My gosh, I never really thought about that until like right now when you ask. That's a good question. I'll just give you an example.
Yeah.
I have a friend now and she's like super outgoing and she always wants to like be out doing things and her and I have had this conversation where I'm like, I'm just not that person. I'd rather be at home cuddling with my cat all alone. And I do think that's a result of what I went through with
Hmm.
people during that experience and being very isolated and not having people show up for me. I isolated myself on purpose because I didn't want to give people the opportunity to let me down.
So you were protecting yourself. It was a
Yeah,
protective stance.
exactly. And I do feel like I'm still in that place today where I let people in to a certain degree, up to a certain level, but I'm not going to give people the opportunity to make me feel abandoned again.
So there was abandonment that you experienced.
Yeah, for sure.
Okay, tell me about that.
Well, I mean, it's if you have like someone in your life who is consistently there and you can call them a best friend, a sister, a relationship,
Yeah, like a heart connection, a warm heart connection.
and all of the sudden you're going through something where they should be there for you, that is the one person that should show up. That is the one person that should be there. And
Hmm.
all of a sudden they're gone. That has a deep impact on anyone.
Hmm.
And that affected me not having a particular person show up for me, and it made me feel abandoned because all of the sudden you're here, you send me a text message, but then you're gone, and I see you on social media living your life, traveling, having a wonderful time, and not even once in your mind are you thinking about me. That's what I see.
So you felt forgotten as well.
Yeah, because it's like,
Right.
it's hard for people to hide when they're posting things on social media, right?
Right.
And I'm seeing people and they're just living their lives. And I'm here, having surgery after surgery, stitched up, not being able to wash my hair for 2 weeks and
Right.
having to order food because I can't even cook for myself and can't even have someone just knock on my door who I care about, who lives 5 minutes down the street from me or, doesn't live far and things like that. I mean, my sisters live an hour and a half away and they showed up for me,
Right.
right? It was feeling of abandonment, and,
Mm-hmm.
I'm still friends with all these people, but it's not the same, and I don't share my deep, dark secrets or my feelings. I keep my feelings to myself. Very rarely do I share how I'm really feeling. There's maybe 1 or 2 people.
Mm-hmm. I hope that one day that you're able to work through that barrier also, because you've worked through so much and you've built
Yeah,
such a strong, resilient framework. But I'm hearing this whole piece about I'm protecting myself the best way that I know how.
yeah,
And I would rather isolate myself first than feel that coming from the outside in.
yes,
For me to be vulnerable, to ask or to let someone in who's going to just strip
yeah.
whenever they want, or it's going to be unpredictable, right?
For sure. And part of that is also because I'm constantly worried about having a relapse and cancer coming back because it happens. And I don't want to
Hmm.
have to go through that again. And I don't want to have expectations of those people showing up for me. So I'm not even giving them the opportunity to be there.
Hmm.
I'm protecting myself for the future as well.
A future that you don't know.
Exactly.
So how much fear is there, huh?
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, you're going to take that one to your therapist now, right? Because
Yeah.
there's still some fear to unpack there, my friend.
Yeah.
But no, in all seriousness, it's like I hear where you're coming from. And it happens when we're scared and your feelings are genuine. I mean, you've gone through something horrific. It was huge. Yes, you had people there, but there were also people that you were expecting to be there that would naturally be expected to be there.
Mm.
It's like a mom not showing up for their daughter, or you're talking about like your internal ring.
Yeah.
And if someone in that close circle is not showing up for you, it's going to baffle you and it's going to rattle you. It rattled you.
For sure.
So that's tough.
You just said something and it immediately made me think really what it was I was an afterthought.
Oh, that's a really intense narrative to have.
I just thought of that based on exactly what you just said. That's what it was. I was completely an afterthought.
And I don't want to be an afterthought, so I'm going to protect myself real good.
Yeah, exactly.
That's where it all comes down from.
Mhm.
Ooh, that's where it's rooted.
Yeah, we're really digging in now.
Oh my goodness. I told you what this podcast was about. I was true to my words, my friend.
Yeah.
But yeah, that is huge. How do you feel about like having that surface for you today? The clarity of that.
You said something else and it's all coming together for me. So, you know how you said it's a big deal?
Yeah,
I never felt like me being sick was a big deal. It wasn't a big deal. Nobody made it a big deal.
because nobody made it a big deal. You felt it wasn't a big deal.
Yeah, exactly. It was an afterthought, you know what I mean? It was never like,
Mm.
"Oh, Sonia's going through this. It's a big deal. Let's do something. Like let's talk. Let's spend time with her. Let's be there for her." Like if I had a friend who was going through any type of sickness or struggle, I would be like, "This is a big deal. Like this is going to affect you. I want to be there for you. I'm going to show up for you. I'm going to make it a big deal for you."
Hmm. And it sounds like you do that for your friends or like the people close to you, whether it's the big deal is something positive in their life or whether it's a challenge or
Yeah.
strife in their life. It sounds like you would be there for
Yeah.
either a celebrating moment or a I'm here, my shoulder's here for you moment, open arms,
Yeah.
right? And
Yeah.
you didn't have that.
No, I didn't. I have to be honest, I didn't.
Do you feel that at some point you may want to learn how to ask for your needs?
Maybe, yes, to a certain degree. I mean, I also feel like, I'm a big girl. I can handle myself. It's fine.
Sure. But everyone should be able to feel like they can ask for help, right? Like,
Yeah.
think about you would want your friends to ask you for help, no?
Yeah. But listen, I also know that if my friends were going through something and they didn't ask me, I would,
You would still show up. I get it. But you would also want them to feel comfortable to share with you if there's
yeah,
something that they did have a need for, right?
yeah. I mean, I had a friend not that long ago that was going through like a little crisis just because, her life was sort of changing in, not a big way. It was just something sort of small, but it was a big deal for her. And I was like, let's get together, let's talk it out. Like, just even to be there and to be an ear to listen so she could just vent and
Yeah,
and express herself. And I remember we got together, and she just started crying and she was just like, I'm going through this, and she just needed
that space.
that ear. She needed that space and that and
Yeah.
and an ear to listen.
And she probably felt safe to do that with you too, right?
Yes, but I never had that, and I think
Right.
I wanted that.
Yes.
I wanted to be able to be vulnerable with someone who cared about me, and I wasn't, and I didn't have that.
The desire to feel safe, to be vulnerable.
Yeah.
I hope you're able to find those spaces more now.
You know what? I've done a lot of work.
Sounds like it.
I'm much, much better. Thank
Yeah,
God. I mean, I you have to learn, right? You can't just live
sure.
life walking and not.
Well, I mean, it's always a choice, but it sounds like you chose to learn. You didn't have to, Sonia.
No, I chose to. Yeah.
You chose to. Own it. Own it.
Yeah. And that I think that's where my work comes in because I'm in the type of space where if you're not constantly learning, you're going to get left behind because it's tech,
Yeah.
right? So I think that sort of applied there where I was like, okay, I got to learn something from this. I got to take something
Hmm.
good away from it. I didn't go through all this to just go back to being the way I was. That's kind of a waste of all of this
Right.
stuff, right?
Yeah. So you were able to be in a reflective place and say, okay, what can I learn from this? What can I take from this? I may not like what I'm seeing or feeling, but I can accept that this is where things are. It's almost like the mindfulness concept, right? Of acceptance and just kind of going like, I may not like it. I may not like how it feels, but I can accept that this is what it is. I have to understand that it is what this is, not what I'd like it to be.
But I also learned that if there's someone that I care about, they go through something, now I know how to show up for them
Yes. Yeah. You have your
because
own experience where you can now lend yourself differently to
yeah,
people.
and now I'm gonna show up for them
Exactly.
and I'm
Mhm.
gonna show up authentically based on my own experience and and
Yeah.
and do as much as I can to just be there
Yeah.
and be present. And that's my biggest problem. I wanted people to be present physically, not just
Yeah.
send me a text message.
I totally understand that. I totally get it. It's painful. It's painful to accept that when you see that it's not happening that way.
Yeah.
It's very painful. This is quite a journey that you've been through, worked through, and I know that you mentioned there's still some parts that are raw and some parts that you're still working on and parts that you admit to be like, oh yeah, that's still a newer area for me, or that one I've nailed really
Yeah.
well. But what I'm curious about is that when people come to see me for therapy, Sonia, individuals, they're typically in one of three places. Some people are getting started where they're like, okay, Salima, I've got lots of stuff to sift through and make sense of. And I hear therapy is good for you, like physiotherapy. So I'm coming, help me build my emotional muscles kind of deal, right?
Mm.
And then I've got people who are in the middle where maybe there is an acute situation that's triggered them to require the need for more immediate support while navigating murky waters, the grayness of things, and making sense of their world. And then some people are looking back either for closure, right? Moving forward in life, working through some past event, or doing some particular personal growth that helps them move into the next segment of their life. So, where would you say that you are in terms of your untold story? Not necessarily your life's journey, but with regards to the untold story that you've shared today. Would you say that you are in the start, in the middle, or looking back?
I think I'm in the middle.
Yeah,
Yeah. I mean, I was gonna say looking back, but
yeah,
on this conversation with you, I feel like there's still some, I'm still in therapy. There's still a lot of things I'm working on, but there's still a couple things that put me in the middle and not looking back yet. I could be maybe, in between those two.
Yeah, maybe you're like in the middle and almost looking back.
Yeah.
Okay. Okay. And so if you're in the middle and almost there placement, what would be different for you if you got to the place of looking back? What would be different?
What would be different? I
Yeah.
would be able to forgive and forget
Okay.
and rebuild some of those friendships without limitations.
Right.
And for me, I think I would be at peace with it.
Mm.
I feel like I'm at peace in a lot of ways in my life.
But fully, wholly, completely.
Yeah, I think that would put me like, exactly like you said, fully, completely.
But that's a really big reflection and a very big owning. I'm giving you a high five.
High five.
No, but for real, like, I asked the tough question of, what would be different for you? But the fact that you can tell me this is what would be different means you have this great insight and awareness of here are some areas of growth. And you know what? I'm going to work my way, in my own time and space, in a way that's safe for me, healthy for me, and not damaging, but allowing me to grow.
I love that. You know what? You just said it. I absolutely love that because that's one thing that I've come to realize. I can't be perfect and I can't be so hard on myself all the time because I'm very critical of myself. And when I'm critical of myself, I'm like my worst enemy. And
Mhm.
that's one big thing that I've learned through therapy and this whole experience is I'm not perfect and I just gotta be kind to myself.
Yeah. You can't be perfect, but you can be kind.
Yes, and I gotta be patient, and it's baby steps.
Yes. Right. Okay. So, with everything that we've spoken about, with every nook and cranny that we have explored, what I want to just ask, if we can spotlight for a second, is we've talked about the story of not just physically, like what the cancer journey was like, all of these facets of people showing up to support you or not support you, thoughts and feelings that you had to contend with, and like the inner turmoil and the masking and all of these different nuggets of your story. How has this entire untold story affected your mental health? Even if you weren't sure about it at the time, at this point right now, when you look at your story of where you were, can you speak a bit more about how your mental health specifically was affected?
I think my mental health was affected. Just I went into a very bad place. I wasn't myself. That's how
Hmm.
my mental health was affected. I wasn't myself. I became this different person. Usually, I'm outgoing to a certain degree. I like to talk to people. I like to be social. I just changed. I became this different person, very isolated, very sad. I mean, I'd be home alone on weekends just crying because my body just needed to release. It's hard for me to describe in words, and I apologize.
No, you're doing a great job.
My head was just filled with so many things like abandonment and sadness and all of that.
Well, you must have had so many thoughts on repeat and ripple effect of thoughts
Yeah,
and all these
yeah,
thoughts permeating into one idea to another idea, and probably none of them rooted in fact.
yeah. And to me, how I see it is like it's a snowball, right? It started out as a small thing, and then my brain made it into a bigger snowball.
So it already became a big story, and now it just gets bigger and bigger.
Just kept getting bigger and bigger, and then it started having a reaction on my physical body where I didn't want to be around people. I isolated myself. I was sad. I would get into places where I would make myself sadder than I needed to be, like by
Mm.
putting on sad music so I could be even sadder than what I really was. And like when I think about that now, it makes me a little angry. But that's what it was. Like I physically wanted to be sad.
I have a feeling, correct me if I'm wrong, this is just a spur of the moment thought that popped up. I wonder if you were feeling so misunderstood and so unheard, you were doing such a professional job masking,
Mm,
that at the same time, you really wanted people to know how sad you were.
probably, yeah.
And it's like, if I just amplify this music, maybe they'll know now. They'll see how sad I am now. I'm going to release it the entire weekend and then they'll be able to ask me. Maybe someone will finally notice
Yeah,
that this is
yeah.
not really who I am. Do you think that that might have been true for you?
I think so, yes.
Mhm.
I think I was also embarrassed for people
Mm.
to know how sad I was because that's not what I was portraying.
Or yeah, so for people to know your true feelings.
Yeah, exactly.
because of the mask.
Yeah.
Okay, like no one should know.
Yeah.
So there's a part of you that's like, I really wish people would know so that I could be sad with people could be present, but then there's also no one should know.
I know, it's confusing, right?
You got to decide. I'm just kidding.
I know, right?
But that's the confusion you were going through, right? You had all these things running in your mind on repeat and snowballing, and that there were two different pieces happening at the same time, right? It's like one
Yeah.
extreme and the other. And you didn't have a way of processing it or digesting it or making sense of it out loud because you were so scared to even say it. I assume that you probably weren't even talking about these things out loud because the mere fact
No,
that you say it out loud means someone could have heard,
absolutely. Yeah. My brain
right?
was just in overload. Like my brain
Yeah,
wouldn't shut up.
right.
And that was part of the problem. Just feel like my brain made it worse than what it really was.
Yeah, it's a lot of extra suffering. But it's
Mhm.
obviously not intentional. It was just part of your process and what happened and how it unfolded. But
Yeah.
certainly, this is part of your reflection is like, hey, there's some things that my brain was responsible for doing. And I'm learning how to make sure it doesn't do that anymore because it really wasn't a good jam and
Exactly.
didn't serve me so well. Right.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Okay. So tell us, what is your key message to the listeners of our show? What do you want them to know? What's most important here?
Yeah, I think it's important for people to know that number one, it's okay not to feel okay.
Hmm.
There's nothing wrong with that. Go through your feelings. But I think that's the key. It's let yourself go through the feelings. Don't mask it, don't hide it, just go through it. And I think that going through it allows your body to process the pain and not store it in different places.
Hmm.
Be kind to yourself. We're doing the best we can.
Hmm.
There's no perfect person out there. Just go through it, be your authentic self, feel the pain. It's okay to cry. It's okay not to feel okay because
Hmm.
it will get better.
Hmm. Hmm.
I think that's a way to process
Yeah.
those feelings.
Yeah. So slow down and process.
Yeah,
Slow down means feel.
exactly.
Because if we're moving too fast, there's no way we're able to actually connect to the feeling.
And I also think that if we don't process feelings, they get stored in parts of our body, and that's how we get sick.
I heard you say that before too.
Yeah,
The body stores trauma, right?
yeah,
So when we are kind to ourselves, we can relieve ourselves from some of that trauma and we can release it from our body. We can disallow it to get stored.
exactly.
Yeah. What a powerful message. So, Sonia,
Yes.
I'm curious. What is that game changing inspiration, that game changer thing that was most pivotal for you, that's close to you, that reflects your untold story? So, was there like a mantra or like an inspirational quote or book or person or event or something that really hit the spot for you?
Yeah, I joined a charity that was helping women after breast cancer,
Mm-hmm.
and I got to meet other survivors.
Mm-hmm.
And through that, I got to build a community of women who had been there just like me. And that really changed my life for the better.
Mm-hmm.
I had an outlet, I had a group of people that I could talk to, that would listen, that knew exactly how I felt. There was no judgment, there was no wrong saying. I think that really like took me to a whole new level, just community.
It's healing.
Yeah,
Yeah, that sounds wonderful. It sounds like it was a really big anchor.
it was. And I feel really at peace because of that community.
That's amazing. And so, what is a cause or an organization that's been impactful to you on your journey that you'd like to give a shout out to?
Yeah, I was part of an organization called After Breast Cancer, and I was an ambassador for them. The group that I was in was 12 survivors, and unfortunately, one of them passed away, and we all got to grieve together,
Mm-hmm.
be happy together. They did like a calendar photo shoot for us, and we got to do fundraising together. It was just a really fun time.
Amazing.
After that group, a couple of us got together and we actually started a group just for breast cancer survivors and women going through it. And it's called Life Unleashed with two L's.
Okay.
It's a community where we're just talking about, ways to live your life unleashed after breast cancer.
That is such an important area.
Yeah, and as a survivor, once you're diagnosed as being cancer free, it doesn't go away. Your life doesn't go back to normal. So having a community of women who think like you, who are like you, we can talk about everything from, menopause to hot flashes to tamoxifen, and even dating with, after breast cancer and your body being so physically changed. And it's
Yeah,
things that need to be talked about.
there's so many things. So many things. Wow. All right. Okay, so Sonia, how can people connect with you if they would like to? Where are you findable?
I have a website for my work, which I'm sure you're going to put in the links. I also have
Yep,
my LinkedIn, and I also have my Instagram.
perfect. Okay, yeah, we've grabbed all that from you, so we'll make sure that all that stuff shows up on your show notes page for sure. So, Sonia, guess what?
What?
You've just dared yourself to share. Congrats.
Yay!
You did it. You did.
Thank you.
Who should be taking a sigh, a big sigh, you or me?
I feel like you need it too.
Well, on a serious note, Sonia, I would just like to take a moment to express my gratitude for the deep story shared in this space today. You have been relentless in not only sharing the burden of the cancer diagnosis and how you championed through the strife and grief and turmoil, but you allowed yourself to tap into hidden spaces and really speak about the experience and impact of it all, the pain and the hurt, the reminders for loved ones on how to show up for each other. Your story is an incredible one to share and to be heard. So I am truly grateful to have been able to hear and witness your story today. So thank you for the deep conversation and for all the daring and sharing.
Thank you.
You're welcome. And Sonia, once again, thank you for being part of Dare to Share Your Untold Story and helping to be a voice in breaking down the barriers of mental stigma. To all of our listeners, if you like what you've been hearing on this podcast and you want to be part of breaking down barriers of mental stigma, I invite you to go wherever you are listening to the episode and hit subscribe. Leave us a comment or a review of the episode and maybe how you relate to it. To learn more about what we offer, visit www.daretoheal.co. And if you are feeling ready and brave to share, please submit your story by visiting www.daretoshare.co. Thanks for joining in.